The stagecoach rolled away in a cloud of dust, leaving Charlotte Whitaker standing alone in the yard of the Kincaid ranch, her gloved hands clenched tight around the handle of her small suitcase. The first thing she noticed was the wind. It did not whisper like the breeze back home in St. Louis. It pushed. It tested. It carried the smell of cattle and dry grass and something wild she could not name. The second thing she noticed was the men, which there were at least 10 of them gathered near the barn, hats low over their eyes, boots planted wide in the dirt. They were not smiling. They were not welcoming. They were studying her the way a buyer studies a horse before handing over money. Charlotte swallowed. 3 weeks ago, she had answered an advertisement in the newspaper. Respectable ranch family seeks educated young woman for housekeeping and correspondence. Room and board provided. Fair wages. But she had read the ad twice before daring to hope. After her father's passing and her mother's long illness, there had been nothing left in St. Louis for her but debt and a boarding house that smelled of boiled cabbage and broken dreams. The West had sounded like freedom. Now it felt like a mistake. A heavy-set man with gray in his beard stepped forward. He wore a broad hat and a look of irritation. "You the house girl?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Charlotte Whitaker." He looked her up and down slowly. "Name's Buck Hanley. Foreman here. And I'll tell you straight so there ain't confusion. House don't need another lady fussing with curtains. What we need are hands in the fields." Charlotte blinked. The advertisement stated housekeeping. Buck spat into the dust. "Advertisement was months ago. Things change. Drought took 2 men. Another ran off to the railroad. You'll be working the fields with the others. Pulling weeds, mending fence, whatever needs doing." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the ranch hands. Charlotte felt heat crawl up her neck, but she forced her chin higher. "I did not travel nearly 1,000 miles to be laughed at." Buck's eyes hardened. "You traveled here for work, and that's what you'll get." The barn doors creaked open. The sound cut through the yard like a warning bell. Boot steps followed, steady and unhurried. Every man in the yard straightened. Charlotte turned, and he stepped out into the sunlight like he belonged to it. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair brushed the collar of his work shirt. His face was sun-browned, his jaw strong, his expression unreadable. He carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that did not need to shout. In his hand was a bridle. Behind him, a chestnut horse shifted patiently. "What's going on?" he asked. His voice was calm, but the air seemed to shift when he spoke. Buck cleared his throat. "New girl for the house. I told her she's working fields instead." The man's eyes moved to Charlotte. For 1 second she thought he might look through her the way the others had. He did not. He actually looked at her. "You're Charlotte Whitaker?" he asked. "Yes." "From Missouri?" "Yes, sir." A pause. Then he said, "And you came here expecting housework?" "Yes." Buck crossed his arms. "Like I said, we need field hands." The man did not look at Buck. He kept his gaze on Charlotte. "Yeah, can you cook?" "Yes." "Keep accounts?" "Yes." "Sew, mend, read correspondence?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Can you ride?" "A little." He shifted his weight and finally glanced at Buck. "Who decided she'd work the fields?" Buck frowned. "I did. We're short." The man looped the bridle over the fence rail. "You don't decide that." Silence fell heavy. "I run this ranch now," he continued. "Not you," and Buck's jaw tightened. "Your father." "My father retired last winter," the man said quietly. "I signed the papers. You were there." A muscle flickered in Buck's cheek, but he said nothing more. The man turned back to Charlotte. "My name is Caleb Kincaid." The name felt important. "I apologize for the confusion," he said. No one works here under false promises. Charlotte felt something inside her steady. I appreciate that. Caleb studied her another moment. Miss Whitaker, though you will not be assigned work today, you'll rest from your journey. Tomorrow, you'll see the fields and you'll see the house. You'll speak with my aunt who manages the household. Buck let out a short breath. Caleb, this ain't how… Caleb's eyes sharpened. She'll do whatever she chooses. The words landed like a stone in water. Charlotte had not realized how tightly she had been holding herself until that moment. No one had ever said that to her before. Whatever you choose. Not what you're given. Not what you're told. Choose. Buck muttered under his breath and walked off toward the barn. The other men slowly returned to their work, though several glanced back at her with open curiosity. Caleb picked up her suitcase as if it weighed nothing. You must be tired. I am, she admitted. He led her toward the ranch house. It stood large and weathered, built from sturdy timber and pale stone. The porch wrapped wide around the front, but wind chimes hung near the door, ringing softly. You'll have a private room, Caleb said. You'll eat with us, not in the bunkhouse. Charlotte hesitated. Mr. Hanley seemed to believe… Buck believes many things, Caleb replied evenly. Some of them are outdated. He opened the front door for her. Inside, the house smelled of fresh bread and pine soap. An older woman with silver hair pinned neatly at her neck looked up from the dining table. This must be Charlotte, she said warmly. I'm Eleanor Kincaid, Caleb's aunt. Charlotte felt something in her chest loosen. It's a pleasure, ma'am. Eleanor crossed the room and took her hands. You poor thing, you look exhausted. Caleb, show her the blue room upstairs. We'll talk tomorrow. As Caleb carried her suitcase up the staircase, Charlotte dared to ask, Why did you interfere? He paused halfway up the stairs. Because you were promised one thing, he said simply. And I do not break my word. You barely know me. That doesn't matter. They reached the landing. He set her suitcase inside a small but bright bedroom overlooking the pasture. You will not be forced into work you did not agree to, he added. Not on my land. Charlotte looked at him carefully. Why? He held her gaze. My mother once told me that the way a man treats those with no power shows his true character. The words were quiet but firm. I try to remember that. For the first time since leaving home, Charlotte felt the sharp edge of fear ease. Thank you, she said softly. He gave a small nod. Rest. Tomorrow we'll see what suits you. After he left, Charlotte moved to the window. Outside, she saw him walking back toward the barn. The wind caught his shirt, lifting it slightly. He moved with strength and purpose, speaking to the men, working alongside them. He did not stand apart. He led. That night at dinner, as she sat between Eleanor and Caleb, Buck was present, silent and stiff. Conversation moved around her at first. Cattle numbers, fence repairs, weather reports. Then Caleb turned to her. You handled the journey alone? Yes. Not many women would. There were not many choices, she said quietly. He studied her expression but did not pry. Eleanor smiled kindly. You'll find choices here, dear. Charlotte looked down at her plate. She had left Missouri believing she would simply survive. Now something else stirred in her chest. Hope. After supper, Caleb walked her to the porch. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and gold. You can decide tomorrow, he reminded her. No pressure. What if I choose the house? Then you'll work in the house. And if I choose the fields? Then you'll work the fields. She searched his face for hesitation. There was none. You truly mean that? I do. Charlotte drew a slow breath. For the first time in my life, she said. Someone is asking what I want." Caleb's expression softened. "Then take your time answering." Wind swept across the yard again, lifting dust into the fading light. Somewhere in the distance a horse whinnied. Charlotte realized something important in that moment. The West was still wild, but perhaps it was not as harsh as she had feared. Perhaps it held something different. Perhaps it held a man who believed a woman could choose. And that thought followed her upstairs into sleep. Charlotte did not sleep long that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Buck's voice telling her she would work the fields. Then she heard Caleb's voice, a calm and steady, "You'll do whatever you choose." The words echoed in her chest like something sacred. Before sunrise, she slipped from her bed and dressed quietly. The ranch was already waking. Boots thudded across the yard. Horses snorted in the cold morning air. The sky over the Wyoming plains was pale and wide. She found Eleanor in the kitchen, kneading dough with practiced hands. "You're up early," Eleanor said with a gentle smile. I could not sleep." That is common on the first night. Charlotte washed her hands and stepped beside her. "May I help?" Eleanor studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the flour bin. "Roll those biscuits thin, not too thin." Charlotte worked carefully. The rhythm felt familiar. Back home, she had cooked for her mother during long months of illness. There was comfort in small, useful tasks. By the time the ranch hands entered for breakfast, the table was heavy with food. Eggs, bacon, biscuits, and fresh coffee. Buck sat at the far end of the table. He did not look at her. Caleb entered last. His eyes moved across the room until they found her. There was a brief flicker of approval in his expression when he saw her working beside Eleanor. "You look rested," he said. "I am." "After breakfast," he said. "We'll begin." The men filed out once they finished eating. Caleb waited for her on the porch. The wind had picked up again. He led her first toward the fields. As they walked past rows of young crops struggling under the dry sun. Several men worked with bent backs, pulling weeds and checking irrigation lines. "It is honest work," Caleb said. "Hard, steady, sometimes lonely." Charlotte watched the men in silence. "From dawn until near dark during harvest," he continued. "Your hands would blister, your shoulders would ache, but some prefer it. There's freedom in working under the open sky." She imagined herself among them, dust on her skirt, the sun burning her skin, silence stretching long and empty. "Would they respect me?" she asked. Caleb did not pretend to misunderstand. "They would if you proved yourself. Some would test you first." She nodded slowly. Then he led her back toward the house. Inside, Eleanor was sorting ledgers at the dining table. "These are the ranch accounts," Caleb explained. "Supply orders, livestock tallies, letters from buyers." Charlotte moved closer. The numbers were not neat, as several entries were crossed out, ink smeared in places. "I suspect mistakes," Caleb said quietly. "My aunt's eyes are not what they once were. I need someone who can read carefully." Charlotte traced a finger along one column. "You overpaid for feed last month." Caleb looked surprised. "How can you tell so quickly?" "The total does not match the quantity listed." Eleanor leaned forward, squinting. "Well, I'll be." Charlotte felt warmth spread through her. She was not foolish. She was not weak. She was capable. They spent the rest of the morning reviewing papers. Charlotte corrected small errors and reorganized receipts. Eleanor watched with growing approval. By noon, Charlotte's decision had already settled in her heart. That evening, Caleb met her again on the porch. "Well?" he asked. She folded her hands carefully. "I would like to work in the house, with your aunt, and with the accounts." Buck happened to be crossing the yard, and heard her answer. He stopped. She'll quit in a week, he muttered. Caleb's gaze hardened. She won't. Charlotte straightened. I will not. Buck walked away, shaking his head. Caleb looked at her again. You are certain? Yes. Then it's settled. The days that followed fell into rhythm. Charlotte rose before dawn. She cooked beside Eleanor. She served the men without shrinking under their stares. She balanced the ranch books with careful attention. Within 2 weeks, she discovered something troubling. Numbers did not add up. Supplies were being ordered in larger amounts than needed. Payments were missing. She brought the ledger to Caleb one afternoon. I believe someone is taking money. He studied the pages in silence. Who? She hesitated. The foreman signs most of these orders. Caleb's jaw tightened. That evening, voices rose from the barn. Charlotte could not hear the words, but she saw Buck storm out later with fury written across his face. The next morning, Buck was gone. The younger man named Samuel took his place. He spoke kindly and treated the workers fairly. The air on the ranch shifted. Work felt lighter. And through it all, Charlotte became aware of something else. Caleb watched her. Not in the way the men had that first day. Not as if she were something to judge. He watched her the way a person watches a sunrise. Quietly. With wonder. One Saturday evening, Eleanor insisted Charlotte attend the town social. You need laughter, she said firmly. Charlotte wore her best blue dress. It was simple but clean. The town hall in Laramie was crowded with music and lantern light. Men tipped their hats. Women whispered politely. Caleb approached her near the refreshment table. May I have this dance? Her heart fluttered. Yes. His hand rested at her waist, steady and warm. They moved slowly across the wooden floor. You are adjusting well, he said. I am trying. You are more than trying. The music softened. I was wrong about something, he added. About what? I thought you might choose the fields. She looked up at him. Why? Because you strike me as someone who refuses to take the easier path. Charlotte smiled faintly. I did not choose the house because it was easier. I chose it because I am good at it. Caleb's eyes held hers. That is exactly what I hoped you would say. The dance ended too soon. As they stepped apart, she felt the loss of his hand like a small ache. And over the next weeks, their conversations deepened. Evenings on the porch became familiar. They spoke of books, of change in the West, of the future. One night, as thunder rolled in the distance, Charlotte found herself standing closer to him than before. I never thanked you properly, she said. For what? For giving me a choice. Caleb looked out at the dark horizon. It was never mine to give. It was yours already. No, she said softly. Not everywhere. Silence lingered between them. The first drops of rain fell. He reached for her hand without thinking. When their fingers touched, something shifted. Neither spoke of it, but neither pulled away. By the end of autumn, Charlotte knew her heart was no longer entirely her own. She had come west searching for survival, and she had found dignity, and perhaps something far more dangerous. Love. The first snow of the season came early. It covered the Kincaid ranch in a clean sheet of white, softening fences and quieting the land. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the house felt warmer than it ever had. Charlotte stood at the window in the upstairs hallway, watching Caleb cross the yard with steady steps. Snow dusted his shoulders, but he did not brush it away. She knew what she felt. She had known for weeks, but the question was whether she had the courage to say it. That evening, after supper, Eleanor retired early with a knowing smile, that Charlotte pretended not to notice. Caleb remained on the porch. The cold air stung her cheeks as she stepped outside. "You'll freeze," he said gently. "I need the air." He leaned against the railing, hands folded. "You've been quiet these past days." "So have you." A faint smile touched his mouth. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, cattle shifted in their shelter. Charlotte gathered her strength. "I need to ask you something." "Ask." "When you told me I could choose, did you mean it only about work?" Caleb straightened slightly. "What do you mean?" She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Did you mean it about everything?" He did not answer right away. Snowflakes caught in his dark hair. "Yes," he said finally. "I meant it about everything." Her breath trembled. "Even about you?" He stepped closer. "Especially about me." The world felt very small in that moment. "I care for you," Charlotte said. "More than I intended." Caleb's jaw tightened, but not in anger. "I have cared for you since the day you stepped off that coach and refused to be spoken to like you were less." She felt tears gather, but she did not look away. "I did not want to assume," he continued. "You work here, and I never wanted you to feel pressured." "I do not feel pressured." Silence stretched between them. "Charlotte," he said quietly, "if you chose to leave tomorrow, I would let you. If you chose to stay only as my bookkeeper, I would respect that. But if you are saying what I hope you are saying—" She stepped forward. "I am." His breath left him slowly. "I love you," he said. The words were steady, certain, not rushed, not forced. She felt her heart open completely. "I love you too." He lifted a hand, hesitating only a second before cupping her cheek. "I will court you properly," he said. "No secrets, no whispers. I will ask you before every step." "You already have," she whispered. He kissed her then. It was not hurried. It was not wild. It was gentle and sure, like the man himself. Inside the house, the wind chimes rang softly. Winter settled in fully after that. Caleb courted her openly. He brought her small gifts from town. A ribbon and a book of poems, fresh apples when they could be found. He sought her opinion on ranch matters, not as flattery, but as partnership. "You see details I miss," he admitted one evening. "You see people I miss," she replied. By spring, no one on the ranch doubted his intentions. One afternoon in April, Caleb led her to the far pasture where wildflowers had begun to bloom. He dismounted and helped her down. The land stretched wide around them. "This ranch was my father's," he said, "but the future of it is mine." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. "I do not want to build that future alone." Her breath caught. "Charlotte Whitaker, you came here with nothing but strength and courage. You made this house better. You made this ranch honest again. You made me better." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a small sapphire the color of the Wyoming sky. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner in every sense of the word?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will." He slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. They were married that summer in Laramie. The whole town attended. Eleanor cried openly. Samuel clapped Caleb on the back, hard enough to nearly knock him forward. Charlotte wore a pale blue dress she had sewn herself. When Caleb saw her walking down the aisle, his expression was full of something deeper than pride. Gratitude. Their life together was not easy. Drought returned the following year. Money ran tight. Long days stretched longer, but they faced everything side by side. Charlotte kept the accounts strong and honest. Caleb expanded the cattle line carefully. Workers stayed because they were treated fairly. By 1882, their first child was born, a son they named Thomas. Caleb held the baby like he was holding the future. "You will always choose your own path," he whispered to him. 2 years later came a daughter, Mary Eleanor. She inherited Charlotte's steady eyes and Caleb's stubborn heart. The ranch grew. So did their family. Evenings remained sacred. They sat together on the porch, watching the sun sink beyond the hills. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Charlotte asked once. "Every time I see a stagecoach," Caleb admitted. "They told me I would work the fields." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I told you that you would choose." She rested her head against his shoulder. "That changed everything." Years passed. Children grew. Thomas took to ranch work with fairness like his father. Mary Eleanor studied books and dreamed of opening a school in town. Charlotte watched them with quiet pride. Caleb still brought her flowers, still asked her opinion before making decisions, still looked at her as if she were the best choice he had ever made. In 1905, on a quiet autumn morning, Caleb did not wake. He had gone to sleep with his hand wrapped around hers. His heart had simply stopped. Charlotte felt the world tilt, but she did not break. Because he had taught her something greater than love, he had taught her strength. At his burial, Thomas spoke clearly. "My father believed people deserved a choice. He built this ranch on that belief." Charlotte stood beside the grave, wind pulling at her shawl. "You told me I could choose," she whispered when she was alone. "So I choose to go on." And she did. She managed the ranch alongside her son. She guided her daughter's school into success. She watched grandchildren run through the same fields she once feared. When she grew old and her hands trembled, she still sat on the porch at sunset. The wind never stopped pushing across the land, but it no longer felt harsh. It felt familiar. When Charlotte passed peacefully in 1921, she was laid to rest beside Caleb on the hill overlooking the ranch. Two simple stones, two simple words carved beneath their names. Partner, beloved. The Kincaid ranch remained strong for generations, and whenever a new worker arrived unsure and afraid, the story was told again. About the woman who was told she would work the fields, and the cowboy who said she would do whatever she chose, and how that simple promise built a legacy of love, fairness, and freedom that outlived them both.